I met Emily when she first arrived here at Princeton. I was so excited when I heard that she was coming. I could not believe the McCarter Theater had the creativity and the courage to actually invite such a towering figure like Emily Mann. And so I immediately invited her out to lunch, and we became brother, sister, and sister, brother. She is a very, very dear friend, and she's a towering figure.
Emily Mann became the artistic director of the McCarter Theater in 1990. She directed the first production. It was The Glass Menagerie by Tennessee Williams.
Emily Mann is a towering figure in American letters because she brings together the best of the past, that she's deeply rooted in Shakespeare. She understands the depths and genius of Sophocles. She's preoccupied with the nuances of geniuses like Chekhov and Tennessee Williams and Ibsen and Strindberg. And at the same time, she's open to new talent. And she especially is open to the talent of women and peoples of color, but also white brothers too. But she is one who brings together the best of the past, the best of the present. She's concerned about the future, and she does it with such a grace. She does it with such dignity. She does it with such vision.
Want to start at the top of 53?
It was during that time, during the civil rights movement, that we thought maybe now.
Emily wrote Having Our Say, the Delany Sisters' first 100 years in 1995, based on the real-life stories of Betsey and Sadie Delany. She's brought it back for her 20th anniversary season, and in the process changed it just a bit in response to recent events.
Oh, I'm glad that Ted Kennedy didn't run for president, because I think he might have gotten himself killed too.
Mm-hmm. Ted Kennedy has made some serious mistakes in his life, but Sadie and I decided he must be a nice boy. Mm-hmm. Because we heard on the radio that he visits his mother all the time up in Massachusetts. Mm-hmm. And Sadie says,
if he is nice to his mama, then he is okay by me.
You know, this it kind of works, doesn't it? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It works. Mm-hmm.
And it was interesting because I went home last night after the library, and there was this PBS because of Kennedy's passing. They did a
visionary.
A Kennedy,
but it kind of sneaks up on you
the Kennedy,
because she's very easeful in the way that she directs. It is a collaboration in that whatever innovation or idea that you have that you'd like to try out, she's not only willing but open to it.
She was a dentist, and I was a high school teacher.
The original production of Having Our Say went on to Broadway, a CBS television production, and a national tour.
I never thought I'd see the day when people would be interested in what two old Negro women have to say.
The story of these two wise old women is the kind of production that Emily Mann and the McCarter have become known for.
Interestingly enough, I hadn't noticed I was doing that because I think that as a producer, you have to work on a gut level. It's one of the reasons I took the job. I was sick and tired of trying to get past questions of gender and questions of race. I remember going to Everyone in New York with Betsey Brown and Ntozake, and Baikita and I would go from one place to another like beggars saying, can you please understand this? Well, a lot of the white men were there, and they were separated from her story not only by race but by gender. This was a little girl's coming of age, a black girl's coming of age, and they had no way to enter it. So when I was at McCarter, I realized that it seemed to turn out, as I was told, that most of the plays have to do with either plays by or about women or people of color. Now, I hadn't noticed the pattern until somebody told me, but that makes sense because you produce what you have to produce, what's inside you.
Emily grew up feeling part of two families, with two dads, her own father and his best friend, the preeminent African-American historian John Hope Franklin.
And this is during the 60s. I mean, I had that rare and extraordinary gift of being a daughter. I mean, John Hope called me his daughter. That's incredible. And to be with two great American historians, my father and John Hope, every week, if not twice a week, the families had dinner together. We went through the murder of Martin Luther King together. We were there together with each other that night. We were there when the Black Panther party head in Chicago, Freddie Hampton, was murdered. We were together when RFK was killed. We were together, you know, you name it. We went through it together, and we sat and we talked about it. And these are two astounding intellects that I had no idea. They were just my dads. You know, I just was there, and I was brought up to think about a lot of things deeply and talk about them.
Emily was asked to speak at John Hope Franklin's memorial service.
The event that most formed me politically and personally, and also artistically, I'm a playwright, was my father marched with John Hope in 1965 from Selma to Montgomery with Martin Luther King. The photo that ran the New York Times, you may have noticed there was a man there with an umbrella and U.S. historians stuck on the top, a handmade sign. That was my daddy. John Hope called my father and asked him to room with him the night before and then march with him on the days. I remember as a little girl, and I was very scared, watching my father's flight take off for Selma. And I asked my mother, why would Daddy risk his life and leave us? And my mother just looked at me and she said, we're family. John Hope would do the same for us. And that answer actually formed, I think, who I am.
Emily Mann is unique among white sisters and white artists because she's immersed in a black family, so that her sensitivity to black life and black struggles was not that of a spectator, but rather one immersed as a participant, so that she's able to revel in black humanity without the burden of white liberal guilt. That's very rare in American life.
To have found that this country, to me, was as segregated as South Africa was a mind-blowing experience as an adult. I didn't think I would have to live that way. So in my work, of course, that's all reflected. That's who I am. But I would say that's another thing I shared with Athol, in that we were both not black, and yet we both wrote about the experience of race in his country and the experience of race in my country. We both lived it in our own particular ways. His was very different from mine.
I'm telling you, I want to sing.
So sing. Nobody's stopping
Athol
you.
Fugard is just one of the eminent playwrights attracted to Princeton because of Emily Mann.
Lots of people.
Nilo Cruz did rewrites of Anna in the Tropics at the McCarter. It went on to win a Pulitzer. Christopher Durang's comedy of the afterlife, Miss Witherspoon, also premiered at the McCarter.
You know, I'm a Christian. I wasn't expecting some sort of Eastern religion person to greet me up here.
Actually, I have a long history with her. She and I went to college together. I'm a bit older than she, but her freshman year was my senior year, and we both applied and got into a rather difficult to get into playwriting class. So my recollection of her is very strong. I've told her this, but she was a very lovely, intense young woman, and she brought in this play one day that she'd just written overnight, and the teacher could tell how full of energy and playwriting excitement she was, and so he sort of said, well, let's read Emily's play today, and actually she read it aloud.
Emily came to the McCarter already known for her theater of testimony, and she's continued to write politically and socially charged plays. Among them, Greensboro, a Requiem, about the 1979 Klan-related murders.
Europeans' Christian value system, Western European value system, has been the bedrock of this country, and if that erodes, I think the foundations of our country will erode.
And Meshuggah, the story of a Holocaust survivor with a secret.
Already 15. It was 1940.
Now, there's something very idealistic about her. I just remember her in that class, which only had 15 students in it, and just thinking she was this shining sort of person. And I still think that about her.
Why I like working with Emily is that she and I are both in the same racket. We're both writers, and we're both directors. So we understand how theater functions best. And we've worked together a lot, and I love working with her because she respects the play. And she makes it perfectly clear that she wants to take what it is about and translate it from the page to the stage. And she accomplishes this. Because playwrights know something about theater that nobody else does. I can't tell you what that thing is, but there's something that we know about when theater is right and when theater is wrong. And Emily understands this, being a playwright.
We are not only, because I'm a writer, able to attract the giants of the profession who are my colleagues like Edward Albee and John Guare and Athol Fugard, but we're also able to attract the young writers coming up because they know that they will be able to do their best work here. I am also someone who's a product of the Guthrie Theater in Minneapolis. I was an intern, or in those days we were called apprentices. I was an apprentice or fellow at the Guthrie Theater as a director. And so I learned classic theater, and I love classical theater. So we like to put essential and new productions of the great classic works on the stage, butt it up right up against the new work, because each feeds the other.
We're never going to pick a classic play because it's a title to slot into a season. We're going to choose a play because there's an artist behind it who has something that they want to say. In the case of the Mauryville plays that Stephen Wadsworth adapted, he was very interested in kind of dissecting what was happening in the culture at that time, understanding the relationship between the servant culture and the aristocratic culture. There's a dialogue that happens throughout a season, or from season to season, when the plays start to talk to each other.
Whenever I hear any movement behind me, I duck.
It's funny how lovely it is to see you. Why funny?
Where's Ernest?
You didn't see her struggling with them youngsters.
Early on, Emily thought she would stay at the McCarter for 3 to 5 years, but she soon changed her mind.
In the beginning, two things happened. One, I was loving being here, and I'd worked very hard because this theater was really on a crash course when I arrived, and I had to pull it back and save it, basically. And so once we were back on the upswing, I found out just before we were given the 1994 Tony Award for Outstanding Regional Theater that I had multiple sclerosis. And I don't know if you ever saw the clip of it on television, but I couldn't walk that day at all. But I said, I am not sitting in the wings while we get this award. I am walking out on that stage and giving my acceptance speech.
The Tony Award is the greatest honor a theater can receive. On behalf of the McCarter Theater's trustees and staff, we thank you for this extraordinary honor.
I thought when I was diagnosed that I should tell the board that I would understand if they wanted me to step down, because it's a great theater and I didn't want them to feel they were saddled with an invalid. And the response was, are you kidding? You just tell us what you need and we're here for you. So, I mean, you don't leave this easily.
And then, in 2003, a second, more intimate theater was added to the McCarter.
So between those two things, and the theater just growing and enriching, and me getting well, and finding I was even more, feeling more creative juices than I'd ever felt, I thought there seemed to be less and less reason to be looking to leave, because every day is new. Theater, to me, is the lifeblood of a democracy. It asks the essential questions of who we are as a people now in this moment in time. You know, our audiences are complicated people, and they are reflected on this stage in different ways. And so they learn both about themselves and about other people whom they've never met, whom they don't have the opportunity to meet unless they see them on the stage. And it's live, and they have that live exchange.
Tell you something else, honey. We were good citizens, right? Good Americans. We loved our country, even though it didn't always love us back.
Thank you.